So let me do a little exercise with you guys. So I cover retail strategy, what's going on in the industry. I follow consumers. I actually have a background in retail. Oh, did you find it? There it is. Thank you.
No problem.
I actually have a background in retail. I was at a company called Guitar Center before this. Does anybody know who Guitar Center is? Yes? Yes? Anybody love Guitar Center? Yeah, this guy's like, yeah, they're all right. Lots of people love Guitar. Before that, I was at Harry and David. Does anybody know Harry and David? Harry and David, the pears? I don't get as much enthusiasm for pears as I do for guitars. But so I was head of strategy for Guitar Center, and I was head of marketing for Harry and David. So that's my background. So I always come to the table a little bit about thinking about what retailers think about because I've kind of been in that spot. But one of the things that I'd like to do with you today, before we have this discussion, is to show you what's going on with customers today. Why are they choosing to buy the products that they're buying? Why are they choosing the brands they choose? Why are they shopping with the retailers they choose to shop with? I'm going to show it to you by going through a little experiment with you guys. So here's what I'd like you to do, okay? What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to close your eyes, okay? I can see you all, so you have to close your eyes. It's a small room. Especially, look at you. Close your eyes. Okay, close your eyes. I want you to imagine it's this coming weekend. And you walk into your local grocery store intending to buy an entire week's worth of groceries. Or if you don't buy that much groceries, you have to buy for a big dinner party you're going to have, okay? You walk in, you look around your grocery store, and realize there are none of these. Open your eyes. Three-dimensional shopping carts, okay? Remember those things? Okay. There are none of these. And I don't mean they're all being used. There are literally no shopping carts in the entire store. There's also no baskets. There's nothing for you to put your food in, all that kind of stuff. So you walk up to the store manager and say, what gives? Where's the shopping carts, right? I need to do all this shopping. Manager looks you straight in the eye and says, we couldn't figure out the ROI of a shopping cart, so we got rid of them. Yeah, you're laughing because I know why you're laughing, because I've been in that room too. Couldn't figure out the ROI of a shopping cart, so we got rid of them. You know, they're hard to maintain, they're hard to manage. You always got that left wheel that pulls you into the aisle, right? So we got rid of them because we couldn't prove the ROI. As a consumer, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? Yeah, frustrated? Yeah. Inconvenience. Confused. Sad, right? Angry. How about nothing good? Nothing good, fair to say? How many of you would continue shopping with a grocer that didn't have shopping carts? All right, I didn't see a single hand go up. Now let me say something very important here. I have shown this to over 40,000 people last year. Not once did I ever have anyone raise their hand and say I continue shopping, except at a grocery conference. I didn't really think that one through. This is my boss, man. I got to raise my hand. But generally, no one has. Okay. Now, let me say something very important to you that you may not realize. Actually, two things. Number one, how many things did this grocer screw up on, and you were never going to shop with them again? Count them up. How many things? One thing. One thing they messed up on, and you were all willing to abandon the grocer you've been shopping with probably for years, that you're comfortable with, that you know. You may even know people who work there. And you're willing to walk away. Let me say the other really important thing. This grocer has every product you need. Every product you need, and yet you're willing to walk away. You know why? Because we are digitally savvy. We know we have choice. That is the state of today's consumer. You can no longer win customers by the products that you carry. It's a very controversial thing to say, but I'm telling you, your products are not going to win your customers. We know you carry shirts and blenders and batteries. So does 20 other people. Sir, do you drink coffee? Yeah. Do you drink a lot of coffee? You said it very like, yeah. Okay. You drink a lot of coffee. What if your coffee maker broke? How many places can you buy a coffee maker? 5 or 6. 5 or 6 just in the area. You, sir? Let's see. You have a nice black shirt on. I like that shirt. If you ruin that shirt, how many places can you buy a black button down? Several. We know we have choice. You are not going to win your customers by the products that you carry. You're not going to win your customers by the services you deliver. Somebody else does it too, and consumers now know it. It's all about the experience. So what is the value of the experience? What is the value of a shopping cart? What is the value of getting that experience right every time? It's everything. Because we hyper-adopt and we hyper-abandon brands. How many of you have Facebook accounts? Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Okay. How many of you have your MySpace account still? Nobody. Okay. How many of you have Netflix? More hands. Okay. Netflix, yeah? And do you know where your Blockbuster card is? How many of you use Uber while you're in Vegas? Yep. Hyper-adoption, hyper-abandonment. It's the same product. It's the same service. It's just more value. And you knew you had choice, so you moved on just like that. That's how fast. Each time a consumer is exposed to an improved shopping experience, their expectations for all experiences are reset to a higher level. I put this up here very specifically because there's something very important going on here. Notice there's a word up here that's missing. You know what it is? Your competitor. Doesn't matter what your competitor does. The consumer doesn't care. Let me give you an example. If you went to Macy's.com, they're a fine company, but let's say you went to Macy's.com and you had a great experience on the website. Then you went to Dick'sSportingGoods.com and you had a horrible experience at their website. Are you disappointed? Yes. Are they competitors? No. It's even across industries. If you went to your banking website, you could find the information you needed. You can use a virtual agent to ask questions. And then, because you're so busy, you had to instantly go to your insurance website. You couldn't find what you needed, and you had to call someone to get an answer. Are you instantly disappointed? Yes. Consumers don't compare industries. That's how we talk. That's not how people talk. People compare everything that they do. When Uber and getting a taxi has become gamified, we expect things to be fun. We expect things to be engaging and to add obvious value to our lives. That is what's happening in the consumer market today. Now, we have lots of stats at Forrester. This is not particularly interesting. 61% say unlikely to return to websites do not provide a satisfactory customer experience. I didn't put that up there for the stat. I put that up there because most of you could have guessed it. I put that up there for a very important word on here. What's the most dangerous word on this slide? Somebody over here. Yep, satisfactory. Do you know why? Because no, she doesn't want to answer that one. She's like, come on, man, I just gave you an answer. Okay, because it's subjective. Because for you, satisfactory is, I want buy online, pick up in store. You want to do comparison charts. You want to see everything through video. You want to be able to talk to your local store associate. You want to be able to get personalized recommendations. You want to be able to, who knows what you want. You want something. You want easy access promotions and coupons, right? You want same-day delivery. Nobody's built the same. We all have our individual shopping carts that make us happy or unhappy, and it's not like other people. I know you wish Forrester would get up here and say there's a silver bullet. There's never going to be a silver bullet because we're not designed the same. Each of us has our own thing that we see value in. I'm an analyst. I need comparison charts if I'm going to buy a pen. Okay? My wife, and I know this because I see our credit card bills, will buy anything you put in front of her as long as there's a $5 off coupon attached to it. Now, we look exactly the same from a perspective of our age, where we live, our income levels, our zip code, the last product we bought. Is that the things you're using to personalize experiences and learn about customers? That's not what makes us us. I'm not like the other 48-year-old men on the planet, at least not like all 4 billion of them. Right? We know this. And that's why we need to understand customers better. And so what companies are doing, they say, well, in this age, we need to be customer obsessed. And that's true. But I sit down with retailers and brands all the time and say, well, what does that mean? And when I ask them about this, they said, well, we want to make it convenient and simple and easy. These are horrible strategies. Do you know why? Because they mean nothing. When people go online to shop, we ask them why they go online to shop. They say it's convenient, simple, and easy. When they said the last time we went to store to shop, why'd you go in? They said it was convenient, simple, and easy. This doesn't direct you anywhere. This doesn't give you any idea what you need to be. If this is your mission statement, you're in trouble because this isn't going to guide you. Okay? The other thing they do is they say, well, we want to do this. We want to make product recommendations. We want to retarget customers when they leave something in their cart and follow them around the web for the next 6 months, showing them that product. We want is a very different statement than our customers want. Your next meeting that you have at your company about your customers, see how many times somebody says, we want to this, we want to that, versus the language, Our customers want us to. And if they make that statement, ask them for the data that shows that. Ask them for the data that shows that. And why is that important? Because without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Period. End of story. Now think for a moment how many parts of your business are being run by opinions. Let me focus down in on that. Your business run by opinions. Very dangerous position that you're in, and then you wonder why you're struggling. You need to use data today in order to run your business. Unfortunately, organizations are not using data. And even the data that they're using, even this dark blue where they are using it, I would argue this is low-quality data. Low-quality data. By the way, all of you taking pictures, I'm happy that you do that. But if you want this deck, I will send it to you afterwards. All you have to do is get me on LinkedIn, ask me for it, I'll send it to you. Okay? So this is what organizations are doing. This is the disconnect. This is why organizations are struggling. There is no retail apocalypse. Stores are not falling apart. Okay? We closed 11,000 stores last year. You know how many we opened? 12,000. Truth. Okay? There is no retail apocalypse. But you are misaligning what you're delivering to customers and not delivering them real value. What are companies doing today to work with data? Well, they go from the stage of being data-averse to data-aware. Right? Data-aware is, we know we need to, but we're just getting started using data. And then they become data-driven. How many use that term or have heard that term, data-driven? Yeah? Let me give you an example of data-driven. When I was at Guitar Center, my CMO came to me one day and said, hey, Brendan, I just was in the room with the board of directors and our executive team, and I've convinced them that we need to make a community for our musician customers to talk to each other and talk about their music and talk about their instruments. So go find me data to prove that. So I did, because that was my job. I can prove anything. I can prove that stores are more important than e-commerce, and e-commerce is more important than stores. You want it? I can find it for you. That's data-driven. This is data-led. This is where we need to come without preconceived notions about the customers, without preconceived notions about our business, and let the data guide our strategic, not tactical, strategic decision-making. And all the companies that you look forward to hearing about at conferences, they're all data-led. All of them. Every one of them. And I know because I talk to them. And we talk about these things. So to be customer obsessed in this day and age, you must be data-led. Finish the sentence. You can't just be customer obsessed. You have to be data-led. It's not sexy. I know data's not sexy. I get it. Customer experiences are sexy. But to do that, you need to be data-led. Data is the new sexy. Now, what's happening? What are we here at CES looking at? Devices. Okay, here's what a strategy depends on. More devices are happening that are creating a bigger data explosion, which is causing category disruption of innovation, which causes deeper customer relationships. Anyone disagree with that? No, of course not, because that's what's really happening. Here's the problem. Companies come to me all the time, they say, we want to create deeper customer relationships. You know why that's a problem? That's like saying, I want to cook a 4-course meal for my family, and I have no idea how to cook. I have no idea how to measure ingredients. I don't even know what food tastes like. Okay? I'm a trained chef. I actually went to Le Cordon Bleu, and so I use this analogy all the time. Right? I couldn't just put food on a plate. Same way as you cannot start with deeper customer relationships. There's a reason these go in that order. Okay? Think about it that way. More devices are creating data explosion. Do you have a device strategy? Probably not. Do you have a data strategy? Very much probably not. Do you have an innovation strategy? Probably not. So how do you think you can possibly create customer experiences if you don't have those strategies in place? You cannot. You'll be guessing, using your opinions, and you probably will not get the outcome that you're looking for. More devices, data explosion, category interruption, innovation, deeper customer relationships. That's how you need to go about a strategy for engaging with the customer. Creating customer experiences that build relationships isn't the first step. It's actually the last step in your customer engagement strategy. Okay? When you try to take it from the reverse, again, it's like trying to cook a meal without understanding how to do that process or ever doing it before. Companies are doing this today. This is not a device. This is Amazon's relationship strategy. That's what it is. They will not win because they have a device. they will win because they have the device, they have a data strategy, they have an innovation strategy, and they can build those relationships. You cannot do just this. You have to do the underlying elements to it. Even companies like Lowe's in doing visual, voice, these are the kinds of things that really matter. Okay? Customer obsession through data mastery using voice and visual-enabled devices is a key to resale success in 2019. Okay? Visual and voice. And these things drive the initiatives you're already working on. I'm sure many of you are looking at a single view of the customer or 360-degree view of the customer. These elements help drive that. I'm sure many of you are looking at omnichannel commerce as a strategy. These things drive that. I'm sure many of you are trying to get that next generation of personalization, which is individualization. These things drive that. So, no matter what you're working on, the things that I talked about at the beginning part of this presentation are important. Don't forget about culture and organization. As an analyst, I've been an analyst for 5 years. I was in retail for 10. I will tell you this. You can buy all the tech you want. If you don't fix your culture and organization, you will be the same company next year that you are this year. Guaranteed. You have to fix the non-technical problems with your company as well. Period, end of story. Do you have a roadmap for technology? Have a roadmap for your culture. Have a roadmap for your organization. Fix the challenges that you have. Get rid of siloed agendas. Get rid of technology problems. That's what you need to do. The roadmap is this. Identify and fix your organization. Identify and fix areas where your organization is confusing customer obsession and company obsession. You are not customer obsessed if you follow me around the internet for the next 6 months showing me the product I put in my cart. That's company obsessed. It's what you want to do, not what I want you to do. Build a strategy for devices, data, and innovation before you build those customer relationships. Align customer relationships strategically with customers' expectation around visual and voice. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment here. And then finally, fix your culture and organizational issues and move to a state of becoming data-led. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is create those great shopping cart moments for customers, and these are the things you need to do it. With that, I'd like to invite Scott up on the stage from Performics. Scott, could you join me, please? Can you give him a hand? Thanks, Scott. What do you want to say? You want to sit here?
You tell me.
Why don't you sit there, and I'll sit there,
Okay.
and we kind of face each other.
Fantastic.
So, okay, good.
Pleasure to be here in the coveted right before lunch time slot.
Yes, yes. I'm reading a book about that, saying that people's attention goes down. So we need to talk loud. No, let's not do that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a recent study that you did.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about who you partnered with on that and what this study was about.
Yeah, so we partner with Northwestern University on something called the Intent Lab. We do it twice a year, and then the most recent version, the basic premise of it is to identify customer satisfaction and trust. And the last one we did was very specific to visual search, how people prefer to do that, assuming they prefer to do it over text, the devices they use, and the categories that they look for, apparel, furniture, shopping, those types of things.
Okay. Okay. And so when you were talking about it, when we talked about it earlier, people think we do this ad hoc. We actually talk a lot before these sessions quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about what you uncovered with visual and voice. Like, where did that lie in some of the outcomes from that research?
I mean, like even in your presentation just now, a lot of discussion about voice. That seems to be the hot topic. But visual is pacing at least at par, if not outpacing that. And I think, we talk a lot about 3 Vs, right? We're talking about visual, and we're talking about voice, but video was kind of the first of those Vs. It was kind of sight, sound, motion.
Okay.
And you'd be able to create some content around that. Now I think when you think visual, and I think people think search, they think Google, they think Bing, you forget about Pinterest, who really kind of transferred from a social platform to a visual search platform. Mm-hmm. And people like that. They trust that a bit more, specific to specific categories. Yep. So apparel, furniture, they kind of want to, in a digital way, have a look and a feel. Okay. And when you talk about voice, I mean, voice is, it's kind of an out there phrase, but it can mean a lot of things. When you think of voice, what does it mean to you? Yeah, I mean, lowest common denominator, right? Visual is show me a picture, and
yep.
Voice is let me ask a question.
Okay.
Or let me use my voice to kind of kick off a utility. And so when we think about voice, it's the phone, it's in the home, it's in the car sometimes, and mm-hmm. Search isn't just about product, but it's about where am I going. There's a personal kind of intuitive approach with voice, and frankly a slightly higher trust level in a return when I'm asking a question versus text, which is mm-hmm. moving down the chain, and visual, which again, is more cognitive, obviously, but at the same time, even there's a bit of a trust issue.
Okay. So thinking about that, I'm going to skip around a little bit on our questions here on the trust issue because you brought it up. I mean, in this age where, at Forrester, we kind of look at trends happening and kind of try to analyze, well, this trend has to do with that trend. Privacy and security have a lot to do with this, and you're talking about visual and voice. That's very personal.
Yeah.
How do you see those two things coming together? Is there a challenge with that?
With the privacy piece of it in particular?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot about privacy and data in the news and in the trades, right? So a lot of those data-driven companies you put up there have all experienced some obstacles in the last year. But I think at the end of the day, there's an expectation on the part of the consumer about the experience that I'm going to have, and I'm willing to make a value-based exchange of some level of my own data. I'm a Starwood member, and they had a bit of an issue last year. I'm not going to stop staying at those properties.
Okay.
So I think we talk, again, to use your language, we talk a lot about it, but at the end of the day, there's not a gigantic consumer impact. Now, we've seen overall, as part of our intent lab, when we do a digital satisfaction index, even though that's a dangerous word, we've seen trust come down about 6 points over the last year because there is a slight expectation of what I'm giving and what I'm receiving.
Right. That makes sense. So for the people in the audience here, I always get the question, but what about my industry? So when it comes to visual and voice, are there certain lean-ins from the consumer that they're now at this stage? I mean, there's no question, as I showed earlier on my slides, that every experience is causing customers to expect those experiences everywhere. But did you find at this state where we're at today that if you're not in visual and voice, your customers are already expecting it? Like, are there certain industries that you find?
I mentioned too, I think shopping and furniture, there's a higher expectation that I can see product. I can't actually put the clothing on through the phone or the device yet.
Yeah.
But there is a higher expectation there. But I do think the two are connected, right? With Amazon Show or Echo Show and new Google Hub, I think there is an expectation that I will initiate with voice and see a return in visual. And so those two things are connected. But I think as that becomes, I think the expectation based on your numbers is by 2020, 60% of homes will have smart speakers.
Yeah.
And then display will follow that. That expectation is going to continue to increase.
Do you think that, I was just thinking, I didn't tell them I was going to ask this question, so I hope you're okay with it. When you think about visual, you think about furniture and things I need to see, right? I don't need to visually see Advil before I buy it, or some Duracell batteries or a light bulb, right? I kind of get the idea of it, right? But then again, those products are fairly commoditized.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And so maybe voice kicks in? Do you think that, like now it's like because I understand Advil, maybe I just use voice. I don't need to visually see anything. Do you think there's a relationship there between the more commoditized an item is?
Commoditized, or another way to look at that is utility, right? So voice kind of had its onset as utility. The things you just mentioned, very commoditized.
Yeah.
Very driven towards Amazon, right? We look at it where Google, you're searching for information. Amazon, you're searching for product. And Pinterest, I think you're searching for inspiration. You don't need to be inspired to take 2 Advil. You were probably inspired the night before.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, and I think that is commoditized.
So for you in the audience, I just want to say something real quick, is that many of you probably think your products aren't commoditized. They are, okay? They are, they really are. Even auto industry has a hard time hearing this, but the truth of the matter is, you're a lot like other autos. You have power steering, power brakes, windows that roll down, comfortable seats, painted on, baked on paint. There's your brand, which is a little bit different, right?
Agreed.
Do you see, now that I brought up auto, do you see voice and visual getting into more channels besides the home? Because you already brought up the home.
I think that's yes, but I think we'll have to see how that plays out, and I think it's going to play out by category. I think your auto example is a good one. I think a voice in particular makes almost anything commoditized because you can just simply ask a question, and based on the algorithm, it can push back a return at you that is prioritized. Amazon certainly prioritized what they respond with. But I think as you get into in some of the cars you've seen here and some of the technology I've seen around cars, what you're going to be able to do in some of these vehicles soon will be out of home. And then what's the role that mobile will play when you're talking to your car versus the phone?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? You brought up mobile. Thank you for doing that because I want to ask this question. I actually wrote it wrong to you earlier. It was actually by 2022, 50% of homes will have a smart speaker in it. So that's the exact stat. Okay. When I had time to look, I looked it up. The question I have for you is, how will that, everybody's got a mobile strategy, right? Does anybody not have a mobile strategy, right? So how does the prevalence of these devices in the home impact people's use of the mobile device in the home?
My personal opinion is that it will decrease. We spent a lot of time developing mobile strategies, increased utilization. So right now you can sit on your couch on your phone and set the thermostat, or you can say, hey, turn the thermostat down without taking the phone out.
Yeah.
Right? And so it goes from phone to wrist to voice. And I think we're in that transition now, but I do think the advent of smart home, the advent of that technology, and the advent of voice in particular will decrease utilization. I mean, you get those updates now every week. This is how much screen time you have. You're gamifying how much screen time you have, and I've talked to a lot of people who are like, hey, I want to decrease that. What can I do to decrease that? That's a great example.
Right. And we find in our own data at Forrester that consumers feel that less than 20% of the commerce they engage in happens on their mobile phone outside of the home. They actually use their mobile phone. The number one place people use their mobile phone to shop is the living room. Number two is the bedroom, right? And then after that, it really drops off quite a bit. And so with this thing going in the home, and we're just getting into visual now.
Yep.
Just starting on the visual side of it. Voice has already been there for a while. Do you think visual is going to have impact on really pulling customers out of that mobile experience in the home?
That's a great question. I don't, because I think there's a personal experience with the phone still to a degree, and it's a different experience than talking to the smart speaker.
Yeah.
And so those stats that you're talking about in shopping in the home, I can speak much like you can about my wife and what she shops and how she shops, and my daughter, who is, I would say, that's a generation that's the advent of social commerce, and I think she's going to continue to do that on social channels, maybe initiated by voice on her hand, but not through the smart speaker that might be in a room.
So the theme of the theme here is experiences you want, the data that you need. How do you see voice and visual playing into the role of data? As you heard me say, and I stand by it, you can't build customer experiences without the data needed to build quality customer experiences.
Yep.
How do you see those two things playing into that world?
Yeah, I think that data exists now. I think all the data that you would need to create that customer relationship, if you're a brand or you're partnered with somebody who makes these speakers, I think that data is there now. I think we're going to see over the next couple of years different ways to model that data, starting now, not in 2 years, and what you can do with it for your CRM programs, your loyalty programs, and merging those two things together so that, I saw a keynote speaker the other day talk about the four main, right? You've got Cortana, Alexa, Google, Siri. They all understand what you're asking for. Google's the best at activating against what you're asking for because they have been the best at monetizing and creating the data. I think that will continue to push, and I think it'll make it easier and more intuitive for me to use voice and have the output be visual.
Good point. At this point, I'm going to like to ask a few more people to join me on stage. You can see their titles. I'm not going to read them all off. We have Mark Gilliard, Michael Childers, and Fang Cheng. Their titles are all here. Please give them a welcome on the stage. So let's talk a little bit about this. So I'm gonna go straight to you, Fang, on this, on the whole device thing. Let's talk about devices, because you're out there with Linc Global working with companies today on things. And how do you see devices playing a role? And what are people asking you about? And where are companies going? And where do you see the heavy hitting possibly happening maybe in the next, not this year, right? Maybe it's just testing this year, but where do you think this is going to get traction?
Absolutely. I think our day-to-day life is serving large brands, retailers, in engaging and serving their customers. And device is the medium, very often creates the medium for those interactions to happen. And what we do see is this explosion of interest, curiosity, sometimes even anxiety of what we can do in the devices. And the advice we often give back to the businesses and also how we build our platform to serve those businesses really the focus shouldn't be just on the device, it should be always come to the consumer pain points, right? And you just talked about a very interesting topic about voice and visual. How do they go together? In what kind of context one may have an advantage over the other? That's absolutely true. That the answer is way more nuanced. So, for example, voice has a very clear advantage in terms of driving convenience, especially in the cases where being hands-free to interact is being valued by the consumer, like home living. And we do see a lot of usage in terms of commodity shopping, CPG, reordering, cosmetics. You don't always consider just paper towels, cosmetics, beauty product. You run out, you know exactly what you want, right? Voice has that advantage. And then visual has that advantage where you can research and look into more nuances and where especially picture matters in fashion and so on. But I think more and more brands need to look into the intersection across device, but also across medium. You talked about an interesting point about voice being used to activate something. And then visual follows up where you can drill into that.
Yeah, and the key, of course, is to collect data as you're doing that, right? So you learn and you iterate and build customer experiences. So I'm going to go to you on this one, Martin, here. Facebook and data pros, right? So let me ask you, what do you think is the most important thing for companies and retailers to think about when it comes to data. Can you give examples of how some industries are using data to better engage customers?
So when it comes to data, I think the most important thing besides the amount of data you collect is the context of that data. Because what I tell everyone is data without context has zero value. And the exchange that Scott was talking about before on what a consumer is willing to give to get something in return, those are normally the things that a lot of retailers don't think about. And I've worked on both sides, just to give you guys context.
That's right.
And what we've learned is that for those companies that understand the context of their relationship with their customer, they know not just what you bought, where you bought it, and the time frames that you buy those, your birthdays, et cetera. You know the most about your customer, and where you can leverage the power of Facebook is being able to connect with that customer. Because where that customer spends a lot of time during the day is interacting through one of Facebook's apps, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger, which we all are aware since everyone raised their hand that they actually have one of those properties. And that's the best way to use Facebook when you're actually using your data in context to actually activate on our platform and actually reach those customers.
So what you're saying in a very roundabout way directly would point, if I had to put a definition over that, I'd at least head it under personalization. What you're trying to do is personalize the experiences for customers, because if you know context, you can start to deliver on that.
Yeah, it's the personalization at scale is the thing that is so challenging, because retail in general hasn't changed for 100 years. It's been built around a store experience. Then everyone added on an e-commerce experience. That's not how consumers look at a brand, and that's not how they actually care about interacting with companies. And so the challenge is, how do I turn each conversation into not just an opportunity for my brand or communication, but it could be a transaction that happens. And so you end up in this place where you're trying to funnel customers to do certain things based on a company-led initiative versus a customer-led initiative. And so you have to find places and partners that allow you to be able to create that experience for your consumers at scale.
Yeah. So Michael, before the conference, you and I talked a lot about your views on companies becoming data-led. Specifically, since we're talking about personalization, using data to create that personalized experiences, you had a lot of really interesting things to talk about what's going on in your industry with that. But what challenges do companies need to overcome to really get to that state?
Well, in the aviation industry, the biggest challenge is that there's a significant amount of data available, but that data is being collected in 7 or 8 or 9 different silos, and those different silos don't interconnect. In the future, as the airline passenger experience is driven by data, we're going to have to find a way to integrate the data across these 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 touch points into some sort of an integrated database that can be used to personalized in-flight entertainment, that can be used to target advertising rather than just one big broad demographic, that can be used to target e-commerce, and to completely personalize the experience. As we have more and more people that are excluded from face-to-face contact with the passenger, we're going to have to rely on data as the means of personalization. We're going to have to rely on the in-flight entertainment system as the access point for that. But if we don't solve the problem of multiple silos and integrated databases, we will fail.
Yeah, I got news for you. The airline industry does not have a monopoly on siloed data systems, right? Everybody out here knows that. They're all like, yep. That said, though, I'm going to go back to Scott on something here. Like, when it comes to that, becoming data-led is a cultural problem, right? In many ways. What advice would you give to people in the audience here? I mean, I don't know how many of you are decision makers that can affect the culture directly. Maybe you feel you can't. But if you can't, and if you're not that, what are some steps that people in the audience can take back to their organizations kind of help change culture, or at least it suggests how they might change culture?
Well, it's a cultural problem, I think, but it's also, in some degree, a talent problem, right? So as you build your teams,
True.
you've got to have people who think that way. And I like what Martin said a lot. I think the idea of understanding context around data in any environment, in any culture, is important because it helps you sift through what we kind of call data paralysis a little bit. There is a ton of data, and trying to figure out what makes the most sense to drive the outcome you want is important. And I think when you look at it and you want to become that data-led organization with that kind of strategy, the first thing is you have to kind of do an audit of what you've got in place around your data and how it's collected and how it's being utilized, around the content you're creating or the types of commodities or technologies is a better word that you're engaged with to collect that data, and then really kind of understanding the environment through which that data comes. Because if you understand that and you have the people who can activate against that, you have a much better chance of moving your customer through that consumer journey that you want them to go through much more quickly.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Fang, I'm going to go to you on something here. Like you saw me talk about individualization, right? And I saw a presentation by Sephora recently. They did a 45-minute presentation on personalization and never once said the word segmentation. Not one time. Because they're more focused on that real-time experience for the customer, context, things like that. Do you see organizations going that direction? Do you think that's an imperative now, or is that just a nice to have?
I think it's very important right now. And I think one is actually led by, when I think about personalization, I think about two dimensions. One is like the performance side. We talk a lot about on performance side where you can go more nuanced and individualized and maybe even down to the moments understanding. But also it's important to recognize personalization, why it's relevant to different use cases. Especially in retail, very often personalization technology is being very narrowly associated with product recommendation, and that's it. But actually it's not. Personalization, contextual information, and understanding is so important for every single interaction you have with customer. Let's say in customer service interaction context, that personalization capability allows you to skip a lot of unnecessary interactions, reduce that frustration, and get to resolution very quickly, and maybe engage the customer even better. So recognize that personalization technology is being used for pretty much every moment you interact with customer, not just the moments where you're being asked to make a recommendation. And then when you understand those use cases, come back to say what kind of information I need, what level of granularity I need to satisfy the need of reduce friction in all of the interactions. You recognize that a lot you're being asked to say have an individualized understanding, but also I need to understand you right now. What are you up to right now?
Yeah. Mark, I'm going to shift over to you on that, because I think that do that right now, all that, I mean, that's really advanced stuff. But let's take a step back and go to this whole, okay, somebody out here might be saying, yeah, but we're not even close to that yet, right? We've got so far to go. And I think one of the things that you and I had talked a little bit about during our call was the fact that you work with companies all the time just helping educate them on what is data, right? And what is, do you need more data? Do you need, right, what is it that you find when you work with companies and helping them succeed, through your relationship with Facebook? How are you helping them understand some of the things they need to do first when starting to work with data?
So I think probably the biggest conversation around data actually goes back to what I was talking about before, which is context. Because everyone always says, I need more data, I need deeper data. But the second question I always ask is, well, what are you going to do with it? And typically I get crickets. And because the reality is that although we've talked about big data and gathering all this information, there's been less focused on what do I actually use that data for that creates a value for the customer and for our organization. And data is only an advantage if you're a data-led organization and you understand how to use that in context and you partner with the companies that allow you to activate that. That's the core of the conversation. Okay. But there's a couple other things that I think that will progress through that conversation very quickly. When we talk about using that data to build personalization, and I think a lot of people need to think about what is the story that I'm telling. Because personalization happens in like channels, whether I'm online or if I'm in a store, that's less of a personalization, that's by area. But if you think about the story that I'm telling that customer, that helps you determine what is the experience I want to give them the next interaction they have. And that could be across an ad, it could be across your call center, it could be within your store. But when that information about the customer is shared across an organization and they understand what that person cares about, you understand what experience to create next for them. And that is personalization at scale that happens in any touch point that happens with your customer.
So one last question I'm going to ask here of Michael, because it would be remiss of me not to ask the question, because you talked about doubters, right, or people that come in and go, yeah, but I need this, but I need that, right? A lot of people's personalization strategy kind of fell apart with GDPR, right? They all said, oh, now it's all dead, right? There's no way we're going to be able to personalize experiences. So, but I don't think you have a give it up kind of attitude. You seem like the kind of guy that wouldn't do that. So let me ask you, how have you, just thinking about the audience here too, how would you suggest people address GDPR in this state today when it comes to collecting data and using data to personalize the experience?
Well, to some extent, Scott mentioned it earlier, the fact that the data has value. Data can be used as currency. So that transaction has to be value driven. We have to recognize that there is a value to the data that we're receiving and we must give something back for it. Another element of that is that we talked before about having these 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 different touch points, these different silos. But each of those touch points gives us an opportunity to get data incrementally, which is a little less intrusive than Somebody said you walk up to a lady in a bar and say, I've been stalking you for the last 3 weeks. I know every place you've been, and et cetera. And I want to ask you another 12 questions, as opposed to walking up and saying, it's a lovely dress. Where did you buy it? So incremental acquisition of the data and recognizing that it has value and it must be a value-driven exchange.
Sounds like you're saying always be on a first date with the customer.
Of course.
Okay, fair enough. Anything to add, Scott?
No.
No?
I
Okay.
got nothing.
Thank you. Anyway, I hope you got value out of this session. Please have some lunch. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you for joining us today.